Coming up today, it's day 2 of the 4-day golden holiday weekend in South Korea. Expressways out of Seoul are likely to be congested again as families enjoy the rare chance to recharge their batteries. North Korea is about to start the biggest meeting of its ruling party in decades. All across Pyongyang, thousands have been gathering for the event. Kim Jong-un will seek to cement his status and lay out a vision for the future. Plus, South Korea's top central banker cautions against the Bank of Korea mobilizing its power to print money for the government's ongoing corporate restructuring drive. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello to our viewers around the world. It's 6 a.m. on Friday, May 6th here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broom. The 4-day weekend most people in Korea are enjoying is now in full swing. In a bid to drive up domestic consumption, the government designated today as an extra public holiday since it was sandwiched between Children's Day and the weekend. To encourage the public to take trips, toll fees on the nation's expressways have been waived, and entrance to museums, palaces and many other tourist sites will be free of charge. Police estimate more than 5 million vehicles will be crisscrossing the nation on this Friday. And rather than long-distance travel, people will mostly be driving in the metropolitan area. So accordingly, the police agency says it will step up efforts to keep traffic running smoothly on major highways and around tourist destinations as well. They will also crack down on drunk driving by setting up more random checkpoints in busy areas and use helicopters to catch drivers violating traffic laws like driving in bus lanes. Public parks, museums, zoos, festivals and parades. The entire country was a playground for kids, big and small, on Children's Day on Thursday. The presidential office of Cheongwadae was no exception. A group of young students were invited to spend Children's Day with the president herself. Song Ji-son reports.
여러분은 우리의 희망이자 나라의 미래를 이끌어갈 주인공입니다. 신나게 뛰어놀고 여러 가지를 경험하면서 여러분이 가진 꿈을 마음껏 키워나가기 바랍니다.
In a message delivered across the country, President Park encouraged nation's children to find their passion through experience. And some 300 elementary school students had their best Children's Day yet, meeting with the president at Cheongwadae. Children from multicultural backgrounds, descendants of war veterans, and those living in remote areas were invited for some exciting events prepared at the presidential garden.
I want to invent vehicles and bicycles that can run across the sea, land and fly in the air so that people living on my island can move around freely.
우리 어린이 여러분들의 꿈이 이루어져서 그렇게 밝은 각 어린이들이 밝은 미래가 열릴 때 또 우리나라 전체도 밝은 미래를 기약할 수가 있습니다.
Later in the afternoon, Park watched the movie Under the Sun with North Korean defectors and the public in downtown Seoul. The documentary, shot by Russian director Vitaly Mansky, portrays a North Korean girl whose life is staged and rehearsed by authorities to make it look perfect to the outside world. With Seoul on Monday adopting a children's charter to better guarantee their rights, the screening of the movie highlights the protection of human rights of children in Pyongyang. After the movie, Park urged Pyongyang to give up its nuclear ambitions and focus more on improving the livelihoods of its people instead. While expressing hope that children in both Koreas can create a happy future together in a united Korean peninsula, President Park vowed to make the country a safer and happier place for children, as all of them deserve to be protected and loved. Song Ji-son, Arirang News.
Now, Donald Trump says the United States should pressure its allies, including South Korea and Japan, to bear 100% of the cost of the American troop presence in their respective countries. His comments have raised concern in Seoul as Trump is now the Republican Party's presumptive nominee in the November election. Kim Ji-yeon reports.
Donald Trump, the de facto Republican presidential nominee, says South Korea should pay for all costs related to the U.S. troop presence in the country. He has made similar comments before, but this marks the first time Trump has called for U.S. allies, including Japan and Germany, to shoulder all the expenses. In an interview with CNN, Trump said, quote, "Of course they should pick up all the expense. Why are we paying for this?" When the interviewer mentioned that Seoul already pays half of the cost to keep U.S. troops on the peninsula, which amounted to over $800 million last year alone, he said, "Why not a 100%?" The billionaire businessman goes on to say that the U.S. should even be prepared to walk, referring to withdrawing troops unless Seoul pays more. He said, quote, "If they don't take care of us properly, if they don't respect us enough to take care of us properly, then they're going to have to defend themselves." There are roughly 28,000 American troops stationed on the peninsula as a deterrent to North Korean aggression, a legacy of the Korean War. Despite Trump's rhetoric, a local expert says there wouldn't be a complete abandonment of the South Korea-U.S. alliance and their military capability in the region if Trump became president.
Even if South Korea doesn't measure up to Trump's standards in the sharing of defense costs, it won't trigger an automatic U.S. troop withdrawal. And even if that were to happen, the U.S. will come up with other cost-effective means, such as increasing the combat capability of U.S. air and naval forces.
It's hard to tell how things might play out if Trump were to become president, but his recent statements carry even more weight now that his rivals had ended their campaigns, leaving him as a presumptive nominee for the Republican Party. Ohio Governor John Kasich ended his campaign on Wednesday, just a day after Texas Senator Ted Cruz bowed out of the race. Kim Jeon, Arirang News.
Now, it's going to be a historic day in North Korea. The country is holding its first Workers' Party Congress in 36 years on this Friday. The event is scheduled to get underway in a few hours' time. For more on how the Congress should cement Kim Jong-un's status and mark a new era of leadership, Ji Myung-gil reports.
The Workers' Party Congress is expected to declare nothing short of a new era of leadership by Kim Jong-un at North Korea's highest decision-making body. Seoul's Unification Ministry said Thursday that North Korea is seeking to cement the Socialist Party center system and further consolidate the Kim Jong-un regime through the upcoming party congress. The ministry added the event will likely run for 3 to 4 days at a cultural center in Pyongyang. Already more than 3,000 party members attending the Congress are said to have gathered in the city. The Congress that starts Friday will be the first in 36 years. It was held 6 times from 1946 to 1980, but has not been convened since the rule of Kim Jong-un's grandfather, Kim Il-sung. The gathering is expected to showcase Kim Jong-un's achievements in the economic and military fields and cement the path for his long-term rule. Kim is expected to underscore his determination to pursue both nuclear development and economic initiatives. North Korean watchers say he could be nominated to the highest post in the Workers' Party, a promotion from his current title of First Secretary, in order to solidify his position as the supreme leader. However, there is also a possibility the event could end up being local propaganda due to the extensive sanctions imposed on North Korea for its series of hostile provocations. Ji Myung-gil, Arirang News.
South Korea's top central banker is taking a cautious stance as discussions on financing the government's corporate restructuring drive gain momentum. One of the options on the table is for the Bank of Korea to inject money into state-run banks that will be saddled with the ailing company's debt. But the governor says not just yet. Kim Min-ji reports.
The Bank of Korea governor says there should be an acceptable basis for the central bank to use its authority to print more money. Speaking to reporters in Frankfurt on the sidelines of the 19th ASEAN Plus 3 finance ministers and central bank governors meeting, Governor Lee Ju-yeol said that the basic principle is to keep the central bank's monetary loss to a minimum in the government's corporate restructuring drive. His remarks come as there have been growing calls for the central bank to support state banks, which will be debt-ridden by providing funds for the country's ailing shipping and shipbuilding companies. The governor also expressed skepticism about the central bank giving cash directly to state banks to expand their capital base, saying the BOK cannot use its authority to print money without collateral. The top central banker instead said that loans are a better option than injecting money in order to minimize losses. He referred to a fund used back in 2009 after the global financial crisis, whereby the BOK extends loans to commercial banks in exchange for bonds as collateral, and those banks use the money to facilitate funds to institutions with low capital adequacy ratio. On Wednesday, a special task force of government and BOK officials agreed to consider all available means to expand the capital base of state banks during a meeting to discuss financing the government's corporate restructuring plan. He said that the central bank will not hesitate if there's a role to be taken and stressed that the most important goal is to ensure financial stability. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now, May is Family Month here in Korea. With beautiful weather and lots of festivities, everyone is encouraged to spend more time with their loved ones. For a peek at one of the biggest festivals lined up this month in Seoul, our Oh Jung-hee reports.
Sea Festival kicked off with a full program of events for families and people of all ages to enjoy, including a cultural fashion show, concerts, performances, a parade, and a photo exhibition. The event got underway on Wednesday at COEX Convention Center in southern Seoul with a global costume show, a magnificent spectacle of traditional clothing in a multitude of colors and designs. Ambassadors to Korea from 42 countries and their families showed off their fashion flair, dressed in Korea's traditional hanbok and their national costumes.
It was a wonderful event. Showing how Korea is becoming multicultural, wearing traditional Korean hanboks. It was a wonderful experience. They are very elegant, very colorful.
On Thursday, a parade full of fictional characters, racing cars, and cheerleaders drew hundreds of people out to the area. There were loud cheers as gigantic figures in red, orange, and pink passed by, and the kids in the crowd stepped forward for the free balloons on offer. Parents seemed to be enjoying the event with big smiles on their faces and holding their kids' hands.
The parade was exciting and colorful. I really want to make the most of Children's Day.
I enjoyed this parade very much. Characters in my favorite colors were everywhere.
There are more exciting events for the whole family lined up through Sunday. There will be a lantern festival and a beer festival every evening, and a large-scale K-pop concert will mark the finale. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
Now, Russian musicians have been staging a concert in the ruins of the ancient Syrian city of Palmyra to celebrate its recapture from Islamic State militants. Renowned conductor Valery Gergiev, a supporter of Russia's President Vladimir Putin, conducted the Mariinsky Symphony Orchestra from St. Petersburg at Palmyra's Roman Theatre. The crowd was mainly Russian soldiers, government ministers and journalists. Gergiev said the concert was a protest against the barbarism exhibited by ISIS, who had used the city's Roman amphitheatre to execute prisoners. Well, that's all we have for now on this Friday morning here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broom. Thank you as always for watching. We'll be back throughout the day with more newscasts. So until then, goodbye.